college basketball, we are talking about March Madness and the teams that have advanced.
Mm-hmm.
We also talk about the fact that 2 blue bloods aren't in the tournament,
Duke
right?
and Kentucky.
And that is Duke and Kentucky. And then there's a program that I grew up with that I remember was perennial, just powerhouse, always a team, always a program that you would talk about, a classic college basketball program that when I saw the news that Archie Miller was out and the job was open, I reminded myself that, oh, that's right, Indiana plays basketball, because it's not something that I've thought about in a number of years. So it was the job. I mean, obviously Bob Knight, but it was, that was a premier program.
Yeah.
So where do they turn now? And honestly, did Archie Miller get enough time? I mean, 4 seasons, I get it.
4 years.
4 years.
1 year with the pandemic. He got a lot of time.
So where do they go now, and how do they get back to wherever they once were? It seems like a long time ago.
Well, a couple of things. Number one, when I first saw the news, I said, wow, he has a pretty significant buyout. I wonder how they bought him out. It's a $10.35 million buyout. Man. And supposedly was bought out by one donor. One donor supposedly said, enough.
Is that a donor, or is that?
Whatever you want to call that individual.
I'd like a tractor.
Whatever you want to call that individual.
My mom would like a house.
So that was number one. So it tells you that the university and people were behind, hey, it's time to move on.
Yeah.
Now, my wife's family is from Indiana. They grew up in Carmel, Indiana. Huge IU fans. My wife went to IU. Her brother went to IU. My father-in-law went to IU. This is all they talk to me about all the time, especially my father-in-law. I talked to him for an hour yesterday about this, and he was saying, hey, look, they're names that we want answers on. Steve Alford, is that a name? Mm-hmm. Like, he's a guy
well, that's the prodigal
from
son.
here. Is that a guy obviously at Nevada now? Do we want to bring him back? Okay, that's another. Heard Rick Pitino's name floating around. Well, look, he got Iona to the tournament. Do we want to recycle that? Do we want to bring him back to IU? Is that more of a Calvin Sampson situation? Even though he got caught with quote unquote phone calls, they were winning at a high clip. Eric Gordon, guys like that. But the name that keeps coming back for me for this job is a guy that currently has a team that has really turned this university, this franchise, I call it essentially, into one of the top tier franchises. That's Chris Beard. That's Texas Tech. I mean, Bob Knight, disciple. I was on a phone call yesterday with Jay Billis, and we were talking about him. All these principles that he has, his fireside chats that he has, that he promotes. He's a guy that really he's cut from that cloth, and he has revamped Texas Tech.
Absolutely.
He has gotten them back to the biggest stage. I mean, national championship-like games. So if there was a guy to come back that can recruit around that, geographical footprint, it could be Chris Beard.
Can I throw another name at you?
Sure.
It might be a little crazy. Mm-hmm. Brad Stevens.
I love Brad
Indiana
Stevens.
guy. Now, I know he's not IU guy, but Indiana guy.
Just fired
and
him?
the Celtics, well, no.
That's the problem, though. How do you do that?
Well, you'd have to wait, obviously, but you'd also have to kind of know that he might be on the hot seat. The Celtics have not reached their potential, have they? Danny Ainge has taken all of the blame so far.
Oh, a lot of it's
but
on Brad
eventually
Stevens.
it falls on the coach, and what they're complaining is not about his X's and O's, it's about his ability to motivate players. And in the NBA, that's a huge part of it.
So here's my
keeping
only
guys
thing with
engaged. Is he somebody that can go back to the college game, go home to Indiana? And obviously, would players want to play for a guy like that? Yeah, a guy that coached in the league, had success.
Yes.
Yeah, I might want to coach. I might want to play for a guy like that.
Here's the only problem I have with that, because I think Brad Stevens will be a home run hire. Mm-hmm. Home run hire. When will you do that? July?
Again, you just have to know. You'd have to kind of know. But
still,
you're right.
That hurts you recruiting-wise, though, Alan, right? Because if the season's over in April, May, June, July, you have to be on the road. You have to be recruiting. You have to secure the recruits that Archie Miller's have for next year. Mm-hmm. Also, while trying to add to that, you have to be in the homes of these players to a degree with what happens with this pandemic. So
but
you lose a lot of that.
Him, I mean, do you buy that year where you just know? All right, well, because you're right, he could not. The Celtics again. The NBA season slides a little bit deeper now, so you're talking about playoffs in June and July, so or late May, June, July. Now, nobody expects them to get to July. This is a team that probably, if at best could be second round. Like, no one is impressed by what the Celtics are doing this year. They're very mediocre for the talent that they have. So you'd have to wait till late May, early June to see if the Celtics make that decision, which they probably would make pretty quickly, because if I'm his agent, I'm letting Danny Ainge know, look, if you're going to make a move, make it now so we can we can get another job.
Well, you guys know who I'm always rooting for. You see Juwan Howard going back home. You see Patrick Ewing going back home.
You about to say Isiah Thomas?
Absolutely. Why not bring Isiah? Bring Zeke back, come full circle. Bring him back home, native son.
Bobby Knight, talk about a connection to Bobby Knight.
Bobby Knight
That's
as
his
well.
best player ever.
We know that he can coach. We know he can recruit.
He actually coached college. Remember, he coached college, 15 years ago or so?
I'm always going to go Zeke. That's always my answer to everything.
Because you're from Detroit.
I love me some Isiah, man.
Yeah.
I love Zeke. I always get, I get worried about the star players that come back home. I always do. I get worried. I got worried about Juwan. I get worried about Patrick Ewing. I mean, Patrick Ewing and Dan Graziano just said it on the show. We talked about it yesterday.
Alums were getting restless.
The record was not great before this little spark. And you start worrying about Patrick Ewing being able to get ran out of town from a town that essentially he built in Georgetown.
It didn't take Juwan long, though. And, I mean, you think that the love that, players that played going back home, it's a different type of love, right? Especially when you played and had success there. It's a different type of love for that school. You know what I mean? When you go back. So
I wonder how much donors would put up to make sure that whatever it costs to pay this coach, it's high end, because I do think that's also how you attract a coach.
Good thing
make sure the money's there.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus right now.